Welcome back to this season's 5th episode of Real College Reviews. I'm your host, Jude Bazerman, and I'm joined today by my good friend, Weston. Weston, just introduce yourself a little bit more for the audience.
What's up, everyone? I'm Weston Ryder. I'm currently a junior at the University of Notre Dame. I'm an architecture student, and I have a real estate minor right now, and I'm planning on picking up an Italian minor as well.
So you're clearly busy on campus doing a whole number of things, but Notre Dame itself, not only academically is it a prestigious school, but you talk to sports fans or even people who aren't that into college or sports, everyone knows Notre Dame. And obviously that probably had a factor in why you chose it. But what were some other reasons or some specific reasons rather, why you chose Notre Dame? And what were some other schools you were considering kind of in your final 2 or 3?
So if I'm being honest, I didn't even think I was going to end up at Notre Dame. Like when I was going through my college process, I knew I wanted to go into architecture. So I went through schools that I looked up had a good architecture program. But to be honest, I was honestly about 95% sure I was going to go to the University of Miami.
Really?
Yeah, I went to one there mid-students days, and I loved it.
It's nice down there.
Dude, it's so nice. I mean, South Bend is definitely not as nice, but I was pretty sure I was going to go there, and I didn't even want to go to the mid-students day for Notre Dame because I was so sure I was going to go to Miami, but they offered to fly me out and pay for the hotel. So
wow.
I'm like,
you were like a football recruit there.
I know, dude, I felt special. And that was honestly one of the reasons. Like when I got there, through the mid-student days and everything, they really make you feel like you belong there. Like the main thing they stress is that it's like, oh, welcome home. That's like the big slogan for the welcome weekend stuff. And you really feel like you're home. Everyone there is super welcoming. Even at all the events, the people I met were awesome. The people who led the events like really cared about the university, and you could see that. And just everyone on campus, people like really seemed like that this was their actual second home. So when I came, like immediately I was like, this is where I want to be. So kind of overnight, I switched from like Miami to Notre Dame.
And when was that like time period? Like, was it in March, April? Was it in January? Like how late was it in the process of choosing, or how close was it to May 1st rather? Did this switch up happen?
It was around mid-March, I want to say, for the mid-student day.
So decently close to that deadline.
Yeah, it was honestly like a very like spur of the moment thing because I was like so sure I was banking on Miami. And then, I mean, real quick, I just switched to Notre Dame.
Yeah, and you mentioned you were looking at schools that have a strong architecture program, and we'll dive more into, what you do in your specific major later on in the episode. But Notre Dame, besides the architecture program, which it's Notre Dame, so I assume everything they have is pretty top tier. But was there anything else that, besides the welcoming feel, besides the architecture, that stuck out to you when you were on campus or, researching the university?
I mean, a lot of the things was just a sense of community. At first, like this is kind of weird because I thought this was going to be a downside, but this ended up kind of as I learned more about it and like talked to some people on campus, it ended up being my favorite thing. But I really like the dorm aspect of Notre Dame because we don't have any sort of Greek life on campus. So the way it works is instead of having like larger dorm buildings or the presence of Greek life, we have 33 dorm buildings in total.
Which is a lot for Notre Dame. Is what, 10,000 undergrads?
Yeah, give or take.
Yeah.
But they're all like smaller buildings. I'm in the largest males dorm because they're all unisex too.
Because it's a Catholic school,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. So there's smaller unisex dorm buildings. I'm in the largest males dorm, and we have, I want to say 275 people. So you compare that to any other college, and that's like a small dorm anywhere else.
Unless you're talking about like one of those 1,000, 2,000 person schools. 275, I'm thinking at Syracuse. I mean, that's you just don't hear about that. But I didn't mean to interrupt. Just to interject, just to provide some context, talking from a bigger school perspective, that's unheard of.
Yeah, so most of the dorm buildings are smaller than that too, in like the 150 to 200 range.
Wow.
So originally I thought, because I was like, I wasn't sure if I wanted to do Greek life, but I thought that would be interesting. So kind of the lack of that originally seemed kind of weird, but hearing about the dorm experience and that it's essentially like an automatic frat or sorority.
Yeah.
Because it's a smaller community. Each dorm has their own set of traditions. They have their own mascot.
Right.
They have their own events, spirit weeks and stuff like that. So kind of hearing about that, I thought that was really cool. And when I got on campus, that actually ended up being my favorite part of Notre Dame.
Because it's I've heard about this before through social media and whatnot, and it's one of the more unique things I've heard about a specific college. And I mean, you kind of described how it works already. Is it random where you get your dorm room, and then like after that, when you're a sophomore, junior, senior, not living in that dorm anymore, do you still kind of hang out with those people? Do you still participate in events that dorm puts on?
Yeah, so I mean, starting with the random aspect, one of the things I liked is because when I was looking at other schools, like you see like the class of like 26, 27 pages where everyone's like trying to find a roommate. But at Notre Dame, your freshman year roommate is completely random. You don't get any say. So everyone is automatically given a random roommate, a random room, and a random dorm building.
So you don't like, because I know other schools, right? At Syracuse, you didn't get to choose your dorm room, but you got to choose your roommate if you would like. Notre Dame, there's
Nothing.
Wow. Okay.
Everything is random. So I was like kind of worried about that at first, but like I don't know how they do it. I feel like it works with pretty much everyone. I know all of my friends.
Did you fill out a questionnaire type of thing where it's like, what time you go to bed or
some like basic ones, but nothing really crazy.
Interesting.
And I know at least with me personally, I love my freshman year roommate. I roomed with him again my sophomore year. I'm going to be abroad next year, but I'm rooming with him again senior year.
Right.
So that went great. And a lot of my friends, they didn't end up rooming with their same roommate, but they're still friends with them.
Yeah.
It's just that like different friend groups, they're going to room with different people. But I think I only know one or two people who like really had a problem with their roommates. I don't know how they pick it, but it usually ends up pretty well.
It works because I've heard right on this show and even just talking to people in general, not on the record or not on recording, it's horror stories sometimes with students who go random. But at Notre Dame, everyone's random, and for the most part, it works out. Which is it's really a phenomenon because maybe it's the fact that everyone's random, so it's kind of just like there's reasons to just work through it. But at the same time, it's just such, I guess, a relief to hear some non-horror stories from students who go random. But moving on to the dorm rooms in a more physical aspect, you mentioned that they're small, but are they nice buildings? Did you enjoy like actually sleeping in it and spending time in it?
I mean, because we have so many dorms, a lot of them are kind of different in terms of quality. It's not like any of them are terrible because we had two that were really bad that actually just got torn down this year. So the worst, yeah, it was a big thing, but those were like actually terrible. So now,
did you ever step foot in them or?
Oh yeah, they had like a whole like going away party because they were like tearing it down. So everyone was just like drawing on the walls and stuff because they're like, oh yeah, it's getting down. Those were bad, but I mean, for the most part, I got a nice dorm building, so personally, I love it. But even like the ones that are not as nice, they're still nice. Like the rooms, I mean, obviously you're not living in luxury, but they're livable. I lofted the past 2 years. If you loft, you have 100% enough room.
What loft? Can you just describe that to me? Because even like I'm used to just a traditional open double dorm room where it's one bed on one side, one bed on the other. Is a loft like that, or is it a little bit different?
So I mean, everyone gets their bed, they get a desk, and they get a wardrobe.
Okay.
So usually the way you do it, because like freshman year, the rooms are typically doubles, triples, quads, but they're usually some of the smaller ones. For that, the usual setup is you set your bed, like it's kind of raised up above, and then you put your desk and your wardrobe under that.
Under the bed, okay.
So if you do that, you have a lot of floor space open.
Gotcha.
So last year, me and my roommate did that. Sophomore year, we also lofted, but you could also bunk if you like really wanted to. I know
like
some people
push them together. Kinda?
Yeah, one on top of each other. I had a few friends who their room was kind of small, so they chose to. I mean, they like willingly chose a small room just for the location, but they ended up bunking them, and then they put their like two desks together and their two wardrobes in the corner.
See, I don't know if I'd be able to do that, but I guess if space was just such a necessity in that situation, you got to do what you got to do. But it's again good to hear that. Besides those two dorms that were just torn down, for the most part, you could live in them, and it's not going to be, an awful experience just because of whatever conditions the dorm rooms might have. And then I want to go back again to the what is it called? It's obviously not Greek life, but the dorms where you're kind of put in a group of people. What is that? Does it have a specific name?
I guess just dorm culture.
Really?
Yeah, it's just kind of, I don't know, like it's very prevalent on campus. I love it personally. Like I think that's the aspect of campus outside of my major I've gotten the most involved in, because going into my sophomore year, I got elected as a freshman. Going into my sophomore year, I was the president of my hall. So I definitely like I loved my dorm enough to
there's
like actually
there's like an e-board for.
Oh yeah, there's like a whole like every week like you have hall councils. Like it really is kind of like a Greek life council thing.
It's starting to sound like one. Yeah.
Like each dorm has their own like dorm president. They have like different commissioners to do stuff. Every week the presidents meet at this like hall president's council to like spread the word on events, just like be up to date on campus stuff. And then the funny thing is it is kind of like, I know I say like, oh, it's like a joke on campus, like, oh, the frat, like the dorms are like frats, the dorms are like sororities, but I feel like that's the best way to describe it, because usually each dorm has their own like off-campus senior houses. So I'll be like, oh, a senior's throwing a night, so I'll go to like a Dylan party. or like I'll go to like a party for a different dorm that my friend's in.
Right.
So it's kind of like a university sanctioned Greek life in a sense.
And I think too, now I want to go to Notre Dame just to experience that because it sounds so great. And the main difference I'm hearing from Greek life, right, besides all the hazing and nonsense that goes on with that, it's that everyone kind of is included in it. You don't have to go through a rush process where they select you, and you don't have to pay dues, at least besides the normal dorm fees and whatnot. But you don't have to pay something on top of that, which could be in the range of $800 to $1,200, even more money I've heard of every single semester. So I think it's really, really cool what Notre Dame does, and you put it, I think, pretty perfectly, a university-sanctioned type of Greek life. But, moving on to, you mentioned seniors in houses off campus. Do you have to live on campus your sophomore year? And then what are some options if you choose not to live on campus, after your freshman year?
Yeah, so I mean, yet again, Notre Dame, like you could see it, they love the dorms, and they really want to emphasize that.
And they like the money that comes with the dorms, too,
yeah,
I'm sure.
because they've run that up.
Yeah.
But so you actually are forced to live on campus until like freshman, sophomore, and junior year. You have to live on campus.
It's 3 years.
So yeah, you have 3 years of camp, and then like usually some juniors will study. Like most people study abroad, so you'll have like only one semester in the dorm usually.
Okay.
But you can't move off campus until your senior year. So that's that's most schools are 1 year. A lot of big state schools, Ole Miss, Georgia, Rhode Island. It's 1 year, and then you're kind of booted off. Like they don't want you in the dorms because they physically don't have enough room. Most private schools are 2 years, then you could stay if you really want to, but most people move off campus. Notre Dame being 3, from your perspective, and we'll get more into the study abroad program as well, because I think it being a big study abroad school too is really unique. Do you like, I guess not do you like the dorm rooms because we already touched on that, but do most students kind of get sick of the dorm rooms after 2.5 years, or is it manageable? Honestly, I feel like most people don't, because the dorm community itself is so nice. Like it's great living in like a smaller dorm with just a bunch of guys, because I feel like in most of the dorms, either they do it by like the section you're in, you have like a really strong connection to that, or just they have a pretty strong sense of community. Yeah. But most people like kind of being in the dorm, having close access to your friends, and doing like a bunch of like dorm events. So I feel like there's some people who kind of wish they could move off campus earlier. Yeah. But for the most part, I feel like most people enjoy being there those 3 years, because you really get to become close with the guys in your dorm. Mm-hmm. As like a freshman, you get to know the sophomores and juniors and some seniors, which is really nice. And then as like a junior in the dorm too, you get to meet like the incoming class and kind of make some friends and kind of foster the actual dorm community aspect. Yeah, and it's so unique too, because even after my freshman year, I was so sick of the dorm rooms, and my roommate was good. I liked my roommate. Don't really talk to him anymore, but he was good. He didn't touch my stuff. Whatever. He was a good roommate. And just after that, there were no dorm room events. Everyone in my dorm room, it was co-ed. Everyone in my dorm hall just wasn't. It was just somewhere you slept, ate, and just studied maybe a little bit, and then kind of talking about eating too. Something that really ties into the dorm halls or the dining halls at Notre Dame. I'll ask you straight up: do you like the dining halls there? Honestly, it's not terrible. I feel like I hear horror stories from other colleges. 100%. And it's not, obviously, I'm not eating like luxury food. It's not like this is great, but it's definitely edible. It's not like the nicest meal in the world, but I feel like for the most part, there's enough options that you could at least find something to eat, because they usually have like rotating daily specials, which I like. So sometimes they'll have some like good ones, like they'll have Indian food or like barbecue night. So it's pretty good for the most part, but even if you don't want that, there's usually like pizza, I feel like stuff like that. I was gonna say you must not be a picky eater, because for me the daily specials I would never eat them. I would just look for the chicken fingers and the pizza and the burgers and whatnot. But yeah, I've heard horror stories everywhere else. But at the same time, like you said, it's not luxury food. No college is gonna have, maybe UMass Amherst, because they're in a different category with their dining food. No college is gonna have that Gordon Ramsay 5-star restaurant quality food. And in terms of meal plans, do you have to have an unlimited plan your freshman year? And then moving forward, is a meal plan mandatory as you're an upperclassman, or can you just choose to cook your own food and eat off campus? When you're on campus, you have to get the meal plan, I believe. Of some sort? I think, you might be able to get out of it. I personally don't know anyone who has, if that's an option. Mm-hmm. But you kind of get, the way it works is you have like meal swipes, and then you have like flex points. So I believe like the default plan, you get 500 meal swipes a semester, which is like more
That's
than
a
enough.
lot, yeah.
It's so much. I think at the end, like sometimes I'd just like swipe in and to like get a coffee, or I'd swipe in to fill up my water bottle. Just
So
with
you're not
like
even
the
getting
cold water.
food at that point.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Like you could just kind of waste them at that point. And then with the flex points, you use those for like the on-campus restaurants. So like we have a Chick-fil-A, we have like a sandwich place.
Like in the student center type.
Yeah, so that's what you use that for.
And it makes most colleges have some sort of meal plan like that. I always ask just because you never know what college has the weird meal plan where it's like, either you have to buy unlimited like Syracuse because they like their money, or for whatever reason you don't have to get a meal plan at all, even when you're a freshman living on campus and you're kind of set in the world on your own. But, moving a little bit towards the classroom more so, the quality of your classes and your professors, have you enjoyed it so far? And then compared to high school, has it been difficult? Because I know architecture is a more academically rigorous major. So what's that transition been like for you so far?
I feel like for the most part, the transition was pretty easy. In the classroom, I don't know if there's any teacher I've had that I've really like strongly disliked. There's some I've been kind of impartial on, but I mean, it is like a very academically rigorous school. So for the most part, the professors are really like well-versed in their respective disciplines.
Yeah.
So you could really see that in the classroom. Like you have teachers who are really passionate about what they're teaching. That passion kind of rubs off on you. So even in like my gen eds, I still was pretty engaged just because the professors themselves like actually know what they're talking about. But it definitely, like I can say the transition definitely picked up this year. The coursework is very difficult. Like if you're going there, you kind of have to be prepared. Like on weekdays, like you're going to be doing homework all day. You're going to be studying all day. But the coursework itself is very fulfilling in that respect. Because like you're learning from people who are really well-versed and you're getting better as a result.
Yeah, definitely. I know from my gen eds, it's, I took astronomy 101 or 104, and the guy just read off slideshows and posted them online. It's like, you don't pay attention to that. But when you take, I'm trying to think of a gen ed class that I took that was just out of this world, which I guess I didn't really have that experience. But from high school, you take a class that you might not be interested in outside of school, and the teacher really loves it or is just great at teaching. And like you said, it rubs off on you, and you just kind of have that motivation to study and really find out why they're so passionate about that subject. And you mentioned Notre Dame is an academically rigorous school. We've kind of hit that nail on the head. And I think most people know that as well, whether or not they're looking at the school, whether or not they're in college, or if they've graduated 50 years ago. Notre Dame has a good reputation in terms of academics. Is it that way for all majors, or just, architecture and the more traditionally, harder majors in the classroom? In a sense where it's like, if I'm a journalism major, do I still have a ton of work to do on weekdays, like you said?
Yeah, there definitely is some easier majors. Like, for example, I'm trying to think of some good examples. Like some of the ones in the College of Arts and Letters, which are more the assorted ones, are definitely easier than if you were to take like physics or like architecture or something like that. But I feel like everyone is doing work pretty regularly, even athletes. Like I'd have classes with like Audric Estime or like actual football players.
Yeah.
And they have to do work too, just because like there's kind of no easy road there. So some majors are definitely easier than others, but kind of regardless of who you are, you're gonna have to do work and you're gonna have to study.
And your point about the athletes is really interesting, because you hear all these things all the time about the bigger schools where they have these quote unquote tutors, and it's just the people they're paying doing the work for the athletes. So it's really interesting too how at Notre Dame, even the athletes have to do the work. It's just not something that I really hear that often, and that you really even see too, because a lot of times they're doing that work maybe behind closed doors with an actual tutor. But that's besides the point. I think it transitions well into what I want to talk about next, and that's the students at Notre Dame. In terms of people in the classroom, what are some characteristics of, a Notre Dame student you might be sitting next to in one of your classes?
So, I mean, I think kind of like choosing a Notre Dame student comes a lot from the admissions process, because they like explicitly say they want well-rounded students. So they want people who have like done sports in high school, who have done leadership stuff and done service. So I feel like for the most part, most of the people you meet are really well-rounded people. I think like a good majority of people are like kind of people who have like been like a varsity sports captain, or were like some sort of like student leadership at their high school. So for the most part, the people are, I feel like, pretty approachable and pretty well-rounded people, which is really nice to kind of be able to like go up to most people and like start a conversation. And kind of like, obviously not to discredit anyone, but they're like pretty normal people. and like well-rounded.
Yeah, I think just normal is a good way to put it, because everyone, like, whatever your definition of normal is, it's just always good to feel like you're a part of a community and feel like people around you want you there. And I think that leads very well into my next question, which I think I know the answer to already. But do you see yourself as a typical Notre Dame student, or do you stick out and just not feel like you're at home? And again, I think I know the answer to this, but just to reaffirm it for everyone listening.
Yeah, I'd say 100%. Just because, like, Notre Dame is, I feel like it's not a huge student body, but there's enough on campus that you could kind of find your group of people and find your thing pretty easily. Like, I found it a lot through, like, my dorm community. Like, most of my close friends are in my dorm, or I have like a group of friends in architecture. But then I have some friends who like found their close group through like the rock climbing club, or I know some people who have like found their group through doing bands. I think there's so much available that, like, even if you don't fit in with like your dorm, or you don't fit in with the people in your major, you're gonna find a group of people that you can really latch onto.
Yeah, that's awesome, especially because Notre Dame, it's like more of a medium size, where it's not huge, like, again, a Georgia, a Rutgers, a Penn State. But like you said, it's big enough where there's enough people and enough things to do, which we'll touch on in a little bit, that you'll be able to find your group. And talking about the campus itself, the physical campus of Notre Dame itself, I've been there. It was absolutely gorgeous. But from someone who's there, basically all 4 seasons and is there all year round and whatnot, I mean, just walking around the campus, just describe to me what I'd see from like a typical walk from your dorm to class, your friend's dorm to your dorm. What is it? What do you see on campus in terms of the people and just the aesthetic?
Yeah, so I mean, as like an architecture major, I nerd out pretty constantly over the campus.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, it's like beautiful. It's a beautiful like Gothic style campus. A lot of the buildings have this like yellow brick that they actually take from the lake. Like, when they started making the early buildings, they take the mud from the lakes on campus.
Wow.
So most of the buildings are pretty much made on site. And aside from some of like the newer ones, they're all kind of stylized in this like Gothic way with like traditional architecture. So it's a really beautiful campus when you're looking at that. And one of the things I like is that there's no roads that go through the middle of campus. Like, all the roads kind of go around or like have like a little like side road that will go into like certain buildings. But for the most part, there's no roads cutting through the middle. So you don't have to deal with cars or anything. So it's fully like walkable. So you'll have like huge open like quads or like really nice like groups of buildings. So it's really designed for you to be able to walk around, which I love.
Yeah, and the furthest walk, you just give me an idea in a sense of time. From one end of campus to the other, what's the furthest you could possibly walk at Notre Dame?
I think, honestly, I had it freshman year because I had to go from the top of campus to the bottom of campus
every day, or like for a specific class?
No, I had like a freshman seminar.
Oh.
So I'd have to do it like one day a week. I'd have to go from the architecture school, which is at the bottom, to like one of the towers at the top of campus.
Oh, jeez.
I mean, it wasn't but it would be like 20 minutes.
That's not bad at all.
So
yeah.
It's definitely like, the campus isn't huge, but it feels a lot bigger than it is. I mean, if you look it up, obviously like square foot's going to be huge because we have like 2 golf courses. So that kind of adds to it. But the main like core campus, I mean, probably you'll have to walk like 20 minutes max.
So yeah, not that bad at all. And there's, like you said, there's going to be no buses really there because no roads go through the school, which is always a nice thing.
Yeah, exactly.
So those bus systems are so annoying. I speak from experience. But like you said, you put it in your own words, you geek out walking around campus.
Oh yeah.
Is there anything special that sticks out to you? Maybe a building or a part of campus that, if you had to tell a person one thing about Notre Dame's campus, like that'd be that one thing that you share with them?
I mean, I'm going to be basic and say our most famous building, but the Golden Dome is definitely like the focal point. Like, I think no matter what time of year it is, like I'll walk by the dome. Like, I have so many just scattered dome pictures. And it's like, I've been here for 2 years. I'm still like, this is such a beautiful building.
Sick, yeah.
For people who don't know, the main building on campus is, I think, our tallest building. And it's got this beautifully like gilded dome on top of it. It's kind of in the center of campus. And all around it, the quad is like shaped after, it's kind of heart shaped, but it's a lot of like manicured like lawns leading up to it. And there's one road, like one major road on campus, and it cuts from like the beginning campus straight up to the dome with trees kind of on both sides. So even like as you're driving onto the campus, the dome is the focal point. You have this like unobscured view of it from the beginning. So that's kind of the main draw. Like, everyone sees that, and that's like Notre Dame.
And obviously you know this, but I took a class about European cities, ironically enough, and it's the campus is designed that way where, it was founded in 1842. I just looked this up, but I'm sure back then they were like, we want this golden dome to be what people envision Notre Dame as, and I always find that stuff super cool, just because it's awesome when you could look at a campus or look at a school and be like, oh yeah, that's one thing that it's known for. And besides that, in terms of, we were talking about, you mentioned rather, new construction on campus, how the buildings are a little bit different than the older traditional Gothic style ones. Is there a lot of new construction going on, or is it few and far between?
They have a pretty decent amount of new construction. I know they just built 2 new dorm buildings to replace the old ones.
That were the ones that were drawn on the wall and they were tearing
the
down.
Terrible ones. The architecture school, I want to say, was built maybe 5-6 years ago.
Oh, so it's basically
it's
new.
Pretty new.
It's nice in there and all that.
Oh yeah, I love it in there. So there's definitely a lot of newer buildings, but they renovate new buildings pretty recently, because we had one dorm that, like, for a variety of reasons, like, is not in existence anymore. So now that building is open it's like a transitional dorm. So usually what they've been doing is they'll renovate one of the newer one of the older dorms, and then the people in that dorm will live in that, like, transitional dorm for a year.
Yeah.
So the dorm right next to us and our brother dorm alumni, freshman year, they were living in that transitional hall. And then this year, the construction was finished. So then they moved back into their other hall.
And it's nice. And
it's
I'm
nice.
Sure
it's like
great.
And it's nice, too, because the exterior is the same. But on the inside, they have, like, new rooms and everything. So it still has that, like, classical character. But on the inside, you have, like, newer rooms and just, like, nicer amenities.
So it's a changing campus, but at the same time, you might not be able to see it unless you kind of, go into the building. Again, I think is really cool, because Notre Dame is a historic campus. A lot of schools in this country are pretty historic. And there's really no need to change it, I think, unless you have to. And clearly they don't have to, because they can manage to make it all nice and spiffy just by doing renovations on the inside, which I think is great. And then moving more towards the social aspect of campus, you talked a lot about, the dorm culture, but are there any other things you do for fun outside of class and the dorm culture? Yeah, like a club or a society or anything that you're a part of, or that a lot of other students enjoy?
I mean, I feel like for me, I just kind of, my approach to just college is just kind of say yes to as much stuff as possible. So over the past few years, I've signed up for, like, a bunch of different clubs, done a bunch of different activities. So, for example, there's, like, a sketching club on campus that I like. I mean, that's more architecture related, but I do a few different, like, some of them are through the dorm, but I'll do, like, intramural sports. So I'm on, like, my dorm's, like, volleyball team and like, my dorm's basketball team. So I'll do that for fun, just kind of whatever comes up to. And there's some pretty cool stuff you could do. I know I did it for part of freshman year, and a lot of my friends do it now. There's a boxing club on campus.
Like, actually...
Oh, yeah. This is, like, I think this is awesome, because I describe this as, like, a super...
Curious.
It's, like, a super Notre Dame thing.
Okay.
Because it's called Bengal Bouts, and it's a boxing tournament. Like, they have the male one's Bengal Bouts, the female one's Baraka Bouts, and it's a boxing tournament that raises money for, like, to build schools in Bangladesh.
Really?
So it's this huge boxing tournament that they do. Like, they put it up in, like, our student center. They have this, like, ballroom. They'll set up, like, boxing rings, and it's an actual boxing tournament. Like, for months they'll, like, train you. You go to, like, boxing practices. You do sparring. And then it's kind of cool because I had some friends who did it, and it's like Wednesday, Thursday night, oh, let's go see, like, our friend go actually, like, box. And I want to say this year they raised maybe like $300,000 for
building schools.
Yeah, so it's like, I mean, that's kind of like where the Notre Dame part comes in. Like, that's the joke. Like, oh, you're fighting to, like, build schools.
Oh, I took it as a Catholic thing where the Catholic Church always gives this crazy. I didn't even realize the fighting Irish. That's brain fart on my end, but I think that's a good way of putting it. It just sounds like and you mentioned this before, that it's a big enough school where there's a lot of stuff to do. And I guess there's no shortage of clubs or unique things that a student, would be struggling to find something to do, right?
Oh, not at all. The club fair is, like, huge. They hold it, like, in the stadium, and just, you could get lost. Like, I know I definitely signed up for a lot more stuff than I actually ended up, like, going to.
Yeah.
But I know freshman year I signed up for, like, a gardening club. My friend was doing, like, a bagpipe club, so I signed up for that. I just, like, would kind of put my name for a bunch of stuff, but they have some, like, really niche stuff too. It's like, depending on your interest, like, there's 100% going to be something, or you could start a club. Like my friends just started the pickleball club this
I'm sure
year.
that's going to get a lot of traction for
Yeah,
sure.
it's definitely blown up. But stuff like that, like it's pretty easy to start something if there's like a lack that you're trying to fill.
Yeah.
So for the most part, you kind of find anything.
And then Notre Dame, too, it's famous for being a Catholic school. In terms of its, I guess, religious tolerance, we could use that term, are they pretty strict on rules like curfews and, no girls in boys' rooms and no boys in girls' rooms? Or is it pretty lax and more like a school that's non-denominational?
It's like, I think my experience with faith, because I've like been confirmed, but I am not like a practicing Catholic.
Right.
I don't like honestly consider myself to be Catholic, kind of, but not
You're not
particularly. Yeah.
I get what you're saying.
Like I think the last time I went to church was to get confirmed. So like you'll definitely, like if you're on campus, it's a Catholic school. Every dorm has its own chapel. Like some of the different buildings have their own chapels. You'll have like priests that live in the dorms and like run them. There's like not monastery, but there's like a congregation that's like right off campus. Like you definitely know it's a Catholic school. And with a lot of the rules too, like you were saying with the girls, because it is unisex dorms, we have these things called parietals. So it's basically you can't have people of the opposite sex in your dorm past midnight on weekdays and then 2 a.m. on weekends.
Okay.
So they have stuff like that, but for the most part, it's not like they're, like it's known that's religious, but they're not forcing you to be religious. I mean, you do have to take 2 theology classes, I will say that. As like a gen ed, you have to do like a basic and then like a specialized theology. But for the most part, everyone's really tolerant of stuff. Like I feel like I haven't had any issues with being like a non-practicing person. I have some Muslim friends or I have some like Buddhist friends and they have like been fine with it. But even sometimes it's kind of like fun. Like I feel like you kind of get more in tune with your faith. Like I'll go to my dorm's mass because a lot of the dorm masses have food with them. So like
ours,
ours is the most attended dorm mass on campus. It's milkshake mass. So it's like Thursday nights, like usually like right before you'd be about to go out, and they have like it's shorter mass. It's like pretty casual, and then you get a milkshake after. So as someone who's like not practicing, like that's kind of a way for me to be more in tune with my faith and just kind of build some community with the guys in my dorm.
Yeah, and it's an incentive too, as whether it's a milkshake or chicken fingers or $5 gift card to Dunkin' Donuts or something. It's a reason to go. But I was just curious about that because some Catholic schools, right, or religious schools, rather, like you hear about BYU or Liberty, and I don't mean to call them out, but they're very strict on not just rules, but who can go to that school and what faith they can practice. And Notre Dame being such a probably the most not notorious but famous Catholic school in the country. Yeah, I was wondering if it's pretty strict there, but it seems like, anyone of any faith can attend and have a good time and feel welcomed.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I feel like it's a great place for you to kind of be more in tune with your faith. Kind of not saying like, if you go there, you're going to become Catholic.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
even if like you go there and you are like a different religion, I feel like you kind of are incentivized to like practice that religion more because you're surrounded by a bunch of people who are really in tune with their faiths or really are interested in practicing it. So kind of being in that environment, you want to branch out a little bit. And even like in like theology classes, for example, it doesn't feel like they're like shoving Catholicism down your throat. Because even like my class was taught by a priest and he'd like specify, he's like, obviously like the Bible, like this, like we're learning about like Noah's Ark. He's like, this obviously didn't happen. But like look at the Bible and like what can you learn from it? And then we like learned about other Abrahamic religions too. I liked it so much. I ended up being a theology mentor for my dorm. I'm not even Catholic, but I liked the material in that class and I liked the way he taught it so much that I led a discussion group. And my professor knew I wasn't Catholic too. Like I
they were okay with it and all that.
Yeah, because he's like, you were really engaged in class and you like actually like the material, so like feel free to do this.
And that's all what college is about too, at least in an academic sense, right? Taking all those gen ed classes, which you're gonna might not be theology, but you're gonna have to take gen eds no matter where you go, no matter what your major is. And if you take the time to maybe put some mental effort into it, you're gonna come away with something, whether it's groundbreaking, I don't want to say groundbreaking, but pretty hefty, like you, in a sense where you really enjoyed it and got into the subject, or even just a small lesson or two, like me and my astronomy class. If you put some mental effort in, you're going to learn something, and that's, again, what you're paying to go to college for. And, we've talked about campus culture, a lot earlier on in the episode in terms of there's no Greek life and that a lot of the community comes from your dorm-specific location. But Are there any specific traditions besides the whole dorm culture situation that Notre Dame is known for, or that maybe Notre Dame's not known for, but that you particularly enjoy?
Are you talking about like whole campus traditions or like smaller individual traditions? I can
Anything,
talk about both.
anything you want to share? Yeah, go shoot. Yeah,
So I'll start with like dorm ones and I'll go like a little bit bigger to
for
campus
sure.
ones. But for dorm traditions, we have like our signature events. So just to kind of give you like a little explanation, I'm from Dillon Hall and we have like our own mascot. I mean, we don't have like actual mascot. It's called the Big Red. It's kind of abstract. They're like, oh, what's a Big Red? I don't know. No one knows. But so we have that. We have our motto, smartest, strongest, humblest. We have our milkshake mass. But we have other events too. Like we run the opening pep rally. So we had that. I mean, it got banned for a little bit because we got in trouble with athletics, but we got it back. So for the past 2 years, we've had the opening pep rally on campus.
Right.
We have a thing called Stash Bash where everyone tries to grow out a mustache and then we like rent out a bowling alley. You bring dates. It's like a whole thing like that.
Like sort of like a fraternity or sorority would have a date night.
Yeah, exactly. Like a themed one with everyone trying to grow mustaches. We'll have stuff like opening day, which is this like huge wiffle ball tournament we do like with everyone in the dorm.
Yeah, that's
so
awesome.
Each dorm has their own smaller stuff like that. Like one of the dorms that just got torn down, they had this thing called the Fish Regatta, which is everyone would like build their own boats and they'd race them in the lake. And I did that. It was awesome. This other dorm, Keenan, has like a variety show thing they'll do every year. So each dorm kind of has their own signature events and traditions and mascots and sayings and everything. So the culture is really there in that respect.
And then in terms of like larger campus traditions, I assume there's a bunch of those too. And what are some ones that I get that you particularly enjoy?
I mean, this is less of a tradition, but just kind of like a big campus draw, like football weekends. Like no matter who you are, like a football weekend at Notre Dame is like a big tradition there. So just like everything about it, like the whole energy on campus is different. Like you step on, because a lot of people will come to visit too. So like you can kind of tell like it's Friday and like people are coming to visit. You have people taking pictures and the campus is already buzzing. And then you get to a football game on Saturday and just like the lot is like completely full. People are just everywhere on campus. So I feel like that is like one of the biggest just like whole campus things I see for sure.
Yeah, and I guess that perfectly segues into, this is something that I'm a big football fan. I enjoy watching Notre Dame football as well. I guess just take me through a day in the life of you, right? It's a Saturday and it's Notre Dame. It's a home game for Notre Dame. What is that like from waking up to going to bed? What does a game day at Notre Dame look like?
So, I mean, first of all, first game day, you got to be up early. They will wake you up. Like, first home game of the year, be prepared to be up at 6 in the morning. Because you got to start the season off right. But for a normal home game, just kind of wake up early. I feel like usually there's some stuff in the dorm, a little bit of pre-gaming.
Yeah.
You'll do it, like, in your dorm rooms, kind of get active there, get a quick breakfast, and then, for the most part, it's just tailgating. There's a few different tailgate lots on campus. So there's some near the golf course, some in the main stadium lot. They're kind of spread all around. So it's just kind of seeing like, oh, do I have a friend whose family's up here? Like, am I going to go see them? Am I going to go to like a big tailgate in the stadium? And I feel like that's, at least socially, one of my favorite parts of the year. Like tailgates are so fun. You get to see just people like you randomly like run into. Like I've seen so many people from class. I'm like, oh, what's up? Or I'll go to like, for example, they have like a huge like Canada tailgate, for example. So I have like a friend who is like from Canada. Like you have to wear pins for it. Like it's kind of exclusive. They have like bartenders, have huge tailgate with like red and white tents.
Yeah.
So I'll usually go to Canada tailgate or just like see who I know that has something going on. So it's usually tailgating for hours and then the actual game.
And how is that getting in the stadium? I mean, it's a historic. I keep saying the word historic about, but it's been there forever, and everyone.
It's huge too.
Yeah. What is it like just stepping in that stadium and the atmosphere as well, and then the actual game experience too?
Oh, it's awesome because you have like when you get into the stadium, you're kind of sorted by your class because you're in different positions on the field. So if like the freshman section is like right behind the end zone, and then as you move up grades, you slowly like move closer to like
the 50-yard line.
Yeah, exactly. So you kind of have to go into your section, but speaking of traditions too, because it's a big one with football games, touchdown push-ups, like just the environment in the stands, like whenever, like there's so many different like game day traditions. Like you have the Irish jig, which you got to learn. You have a lot of different chants. like for the different stuff. But I think my favorite football tradition and one of my favorite campus traditions is touchdown push-ups.
And what is that?
I'll send you a video of this too because I think it's hilarious, like
That'd
seeing it
be
from an outsider point of view.
great.
But like whenever we score a touchdown, you'll like lift someone up and you lift them up in the air for the amount of points that we score. It's like
Jeez.
7 points. Like you're tossing them up 7 times. So like when you're looking at especially like as like a spectator, someone who's not in the stands, you're like looking at the student section and just people launching people up after every touchdown. I think it's just like such a fun thing. Like I've been up for touchdown push-ups before. It's fun.
It sounds funny. And I'm excited. I'm just excited to see those videos. And I'm going to look it up too once I'm done with this just to see that. And in terms of, the game's over, Notre Dame hopefully ideally won. Do you still go out after the game, or is the day kind of done after that point because everyone's tired and just wants to chill out?
Honestly, it's kind of like a play-by-ear kind of thing.
Right.
Where you definitely can go out. I tell you, after a loss, like campus is dead.
Yeah.
It's especially like this year, like after the Ohio State loss. Walking back, there's nothing to do.
I was watching it in Syracuse. I was pissed after that.
Oh my god, that was I was.
You were there for
heartbreaking,
that too?
and just like that kind of losses like that, you can feel it on campus. But if it goes well and we win, you definitely can go out. I think it kind of depends on the person, but there is stuff you go to. Usually it's like bars, or if there's a win, it's like the Saturday. Sometimes like the football house will like throw something, or like certain houses will like have a party. So there is usually stuff you could do, but it's kind of, you could have as much of like a going out, like social life as you want to.
Yeah.
If you're tired after the game, you want to go back, just chill with your friends, you can. But there definitely is like parties or like bar locations that everyone's going to.
And it makes sense too. And I forgot to ask this at the start, but are tickets for students, obviously you have to pay for them, and then are they guaranteed, or is it a lottery system like at Penn State or Clemson where you're not guaranteed that student ticket for the football games?
So the way it works is you do have to pay, but if like every student is guaranteed a ticket, if you do pay.
Yeah.
So usually like the way I've done it the past 2 years is you buy like the season tickets.
Right.
So you get a ticket for every home game. And then like if for some reason, let's say you're like visiting a friend like one weekend, you could just like sell your ticket to someone else.
Yeah.
So you don't have to do, at least for home games, you don't have to do any sort of lottery. Like if you buy a ticket, you get a spot.
Okay.
But for the away games, there is lotteries that you have to go to.
Like, well, for away games, will they bus you out to that location?
They won't bus you out. You got to do like transportation yourself.
But they still sell student tickets.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you could still get them. Like, for example, me and my friends were thinking about going to the Clemson game, and it didn't work out.
Yeah.
But like we had a plan. Like you have to like find your own way of transportation.
That's far, man. All the way down to South Carolina.
Yeah, it's a whole trip. Actually, I mean, I'm gonna be abroad, so I can't do this. But all my friends are going to the Texas A&M game. Wow. So, I mean, they actually do have a shuttle because they have like a Notre Dame club of Texas. I think that
Are there a lot of people from Texas that go to Notre Dame?
Apparently. I mean, there's people from everywhere. Just because it is a private school, you get people from everywhere. But so I think they're flying down. They have their tickets already. They're going to watch the game. And then I think they're getting bused back up. So it's pretty easy. And I know at least like juniors and seniors, most of them will try their best to go to as many like away games as possible, especially like the big ones.
And Notre Dame's obviously known for its storied football program that's still competitive, but are any other sports on campus popular that students go to, or is it really just football and that's it?
Yeah, so I mean, for other sports, this is nice. You don't have to pay for tickets.
So it's free to go to a basketball game or...
Yeah.
That's good.
So, I mean, our basketball team hasn't been the best. So, like, I have gone to a few basketball games. I'm not regularly going, but I'll usually go to, like, the big lacrosse games. That's kind of our second biggest sport.
Well, they just won a national championship, too.
Yeah, back to back.
Yeah.
So, lacrosse is probably the second biggest sport. I've gone to some soccer games. But you definitely, like, do want to go to some of the other ones, but it kind of just depends. Like, if there's a big game, like, oh, let's go with the friends. But obviously football is the biggest. But there is some other ones you can go to.
Yeah, and it makes sense at most schools, football's the biggest sport, or maybe if it's a UNC or a UVA, it's basketball, or maybe a smaller Catholic school like Villanova or Providence. But in terms of nightlife, we've touched on it a little bit, but is there stuff to do? Are there a lot of parties to go to? And then if you're not into parties, is there stuff to do for students on Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights so that they're not just stuck in their dorms besides, partying and drinking and the typical, quote unquote college experience?
Yeah, so I'm gonna say this. If you are looking for a party school, do not go to Notre Dame. Like compared to just any I think any state school is gonna have more activity than Notre Dame. So it's not like there isn't any sort of nightlife, but I mean there's like a few bars that a lot of people go to. There's some parties, but the parties aren't crazy. There's like one big one that we usually have, and there's like some other scattered ones. So there is stuff to do. Like I know at least the way it worked for me is like freshman year, I felt like I was going to more so parties.
Yeah.
So I'd like go to those because there's like different houses that throw. So it's like if like a sports team was having a party, or if like a club was having a party, or just like our dorm. Like a lot of them are like dorm parties. I know freshman year there's parties in the actual dorms.
Yeah.
So I would like go to some of those, or there's like an off-campus house that would have something. So there is stuff to do, but it's like compared to other schools, it's nothing crazy. And then like kind of as you're getting older, I feel like you mainly go to bars.
Yeah.
So there is a few bars to go to too, but yet again, like compared to any like big school, like Notre Dame is not the place you want to go for partying. But if you're not into that, there definitely is stuff you can do on campus. Like I feel a lot of nights, if there's just like something to do, I do that instead of going out. Like I said, there's that like nighttime mass on Thursdays, or sometimes I'd have like volleyball games on Thursday nights, or there's like live music in the student center on Thursday nights. So there is stuff to do. So it's kind of, you could get as involved with the social life as you want to.
Yeah, and that's always the makings of a good school, where you don't have to choose one or the other. You kind of get a mix of both. And Notre Dame, it's just a sense of, you can't really punch above its weight class, where you can't compete with Arizona State University when they have 30, 40,000 kids, and they're in Tempe, Arizona, and and we'll talk about this now. I guess you're in South Bend, Indiana, and when people think of Notre Dame, it's not so much tied with Indiana. It's more so either tied with Catholicism or football or the academics. What is living in South Bend, Indiana for 7 or 8 months like? And, just describe that off-campus experience, and, the weather as well, because I don't think a lot of people know what, Indiana weather is like too.
So, I mean, I say this a lot. If Notre Dame could be like picked up and placed in like Florida or just anywhere that's not Indiana, I think like perfect school. But the location, I think, what is my least favorite part. It was one of the parts that was like kind of weighing on my decision, because in Indiana, like we are very north Indiana. Like we are on the border. I think I could get to Michigan in like 10 minutes.
Right.
And we're right near the lakes too. So fall is like really nice and spring is nice, but for a good majority of the year, you have that lake effect.
Gray and cold and snowy.
Exactly. So it's not even like, it definitely is cold, but I mean, it's like not as cold as like Syracuse or like Cornell or like a northern school.
I was going to say, I know all about the lake effect and the gray, but
the perma gray is definitely like a big factor. Luckily, the past 2 years, apparently we've had like lighter winters than they're usually used to. But for the most part, you're going to have to deal with that gray for most of the time. You're going to have to deal with a lot of snow in winter, and it's going to be pretty cold. So that's definitely with the weather. That's one thing I personally don't like. Yeah. But there is that stretch, like when you're coming in the fall, and then when you're leaving in the spring. Like when it's, especially fall on campus too, it's beautiful because they have so many trees. Like when the leaves are changing, it's beautiful. And like the wide open space on campus. Like when people are out just like on the quad, like playing spike ball, or they have music, or just like are doing anything outside, like campus really comes alive. So it's a shame that we don't have that for more of the year. But then like when you kind of get off of campus, like the actual location kind of sucks too. Because South Bend, Indiana, there is not much to do. Because it's like quote unquote a city, but
it's not Chicago or Boston or New York. Yeah.
Like there's like the food is not great. There's some good restaurants I'll go to, but for the most part, there's like not too much to do. I'm like kind of not going out into South Bend unless I have like errands to do. I'm like getting food, or I'm like going to a party. So like those are the kind of main reasons I'm off.
It's not like a school, right? Northeastern was the previous episode. It's not like a school where the college experience is very tied into the surrounding area. Notre Dame could kind of be anywhere, and you'd have a similar experience. Like you could be plopped in a middle of Montana, and it would be similar.
Yeah, there's definitely like you kind of get whatever you need in South Bend, because it is like it's more populated than like a small town. Because it is a pretty big city.
I think it's 40, 50,000 people, roughly off the top of my head.
Yeah, so it's pretty substantial, but for the most part, it's just kind of like a nondescript city. There's not too much to do. There's some, I mean, like this is obviously from an architecture perspective. There's some like really nice buildings downtown, and there honestly is a pretty nice downtown, but I feel like no one really goes or like does anything with it. And I mean, in terms of cities, I want to say we're like 2 hours from Chicago, maybe like 3 from Indianapolis. So it's not like we're it's not like we're completely like stranded. Like sometimes you'll like go up. Some of the dorms have their like formals in Chicago, or like if you're like flying out, you could like go to Chicago or something.
Yeah.
So it's not like the city is like, it's not like middle of nowhere. It's just the surrounding city. There's kind of not much to do.
Yeah,
which is definitely like one of the parts I don't like.
Yeah, and I looked it up too. I was dead wrong. 103,000 people, Google says, live in South Bend. So it's bigger than I thought. But again, it's not like a New York City or a Boston. And, you know, you talked about the location being one of your least favorite parts of Notre Dame. But the good thing about it is studying abroad. And you just came back from a program in Thailand, I believe, and you're going to study abroad for your entire junior year. So just take me through, you know, the study abroad process and should someone who goes to Notre Dame expect to study abroad, or is it few and far between study abroad at Notre Dame?
So I wish I knew the statistic off the top of my head, because I was a tour guide. They like tell us study abroad stats, and I want to say like 50% or more of the students study abroad.
Wow.
I think
so it's a majority.
Yeah, we are. I mean, you could fact check me on this. We're one of the biggest study abroad schools in the country. I think we're one of the, like, in terms of just like how, like, the percentage of people, like, we get a lot of study abroad because we have so many different programs and partnerships with like schools and just places.
So you could go a ton of places.
Yeah, exactly. So I feel like unless you're studying for the MCAT or like you have a reason financially, you can't study abroad.
Yeah.
But even then, they're really generous. So just to talk about my study abroad experience, I just got back from a program with the real estate department in Thailand. It was a 2.5-week program. Amazing. Easily one of the coolest experiences of my life. So it was like a very nice trip, but you're also learning more about the real estate curriculum. Mm-hmm. And there was coursework I had to do, obviously, but for the most part, it was like a very experience-based program. Yeah. But just in terms of accessibility too, like even I was able to do this as an architecture student. There's a good mix of people from different majors that did it. So they're not that restrictive. And in terms of funding, Notre Dame has so much money.
It's a big endowment.
Like I think I got most of the trip paid for by like filling out like scholarships and just like other like requests for like awards and stuff. So I mean, like I think I only ended up paying for like my food and my flight,
which is for going to big
yeah,
trip
exactly.
like that, it's not that bad.
So, and then I know a lot of people who did like Rome summer programs. Like one of my friends just got back from Rome. I have a friend in Germany right now. They have so many different study abroad programs. And for me, like the actual semester study abroad, my experience is definitely a little different from most people because for the architecture program, you're required to study abroad in Rome for both semesters your junior year.
No matter what.
No matter who you are, no matter what you do. If you're an architect, you're gonna study in Rome your junior year. So I like didn't have to do any of like the paperwork. I didn't have to do anything. From freshman year, I knew that junior year,
they're
both
sending
semesters,
you there no matter what.
Exactly. Like I knew it, which is also a huge draw of why I went and something I'm really looking forward to because Notre Dame has like a villa out in Rome. So it's somewhere for us to stay. I've only heard good things about the program. So like having that secured study abroad is awesome. But for people who aren't, it's still really accessible to study abroad. Because when you fill it out, I'm not too familiar with the program, but from hearing like from my friends, you usually fill it out with a few of your top choices for like fall and spring. So they try their best to get you to study abroad somewhere. So like I've had friends who maybe they had like Rome as their first choice. Like for example, like Rome Spring, their first choice, because that's like the most desired program. And then either if they couldn't get in, they've been like they've had the option to do Rome Fall or to do like Dublin Spring or something.
Which is definitely not a bad option at all.
Oh yeah. Like I think all the study abroad programs are good, but they tried their best for anyone who wants to study abroad to give them the opportunity to. And
that's great too, because some schools it's really, really competitive for whatever reason. But at Notre Dame, we said over half at first. I just looked it up. It's 77% of students.
I was lowballing it a lot.
Yeah, at that point, it's like if you're not going, you just don't want to go, which is fine. But for me, you know, I think it's just such a great experience as well. And Weston, as we wrap up here, if there's a way that you could describe Notre Dame in just one sentence, you know, Shoot, just give it to me. I want to hear if you had an elevator pitch for Notre Dame, what would it be?
I had an elevator pitch. I'd say, I mean, I think its selling points are its community, its academics, and just a sense of home. When you're there, you feel like it's your second home.
That's a great way to put it. And that's what I asked for one test. Sometimes people will just go on, rambling tangents about, my school's so great and whatnot. But I think you've already hit on every single point you could to sell Notre Dame to someone who's looking at schools. And, on that topic, is there any advice for, students going to Notre Dame, students looking at Notre Dame, or just students throughout the admissions process in general?
I think for people looking at it, I'd say that it's a really well-rounded school. We have good sports. We have good athletics. Maybe like if you're looking for a party school, this isn't the place to go, but just for like a sense of community, I'd recommend it. I love Notre Dame. I've had a great experience. And for people who might be deciding to come here or just enrolling, my advice that I think allowed me to love Notre Dame so much is to take advantage of everything. There's so much stuff to do. And just by like kind of saying yes, I've been president of my hall. I ran for that. I've done like a male beauty pageant. I've like raced boats in the lake. I've been on like various like intramural sports teams. I've studied abroad. Like there is so much for you to do at Notre Dame. And if you just kind of try everything you can, like you are going to love it.
Yeah, and I think that's great advice for colleges in general, because most college, it's a place for you to learn. It's a place for you to experience new things. And, Weston, that's all I really had. Is there anything else you want to add about Notre Dame or anything in general?
I mean, I think that's it. As someone who, like, I know people at Notre Dame, because it's obviously a very, like, historical school, as you said a lot.
Right.
So I know people who this is their third or fourth generation Notre Dame students. Like, their grandparents have, like, met at Notre Dame. Their parents both went to Notre Dame. They met each other there. But as someone who had no affiliation with Notre Dame, who didn't even know if he wanted to go to Notre Dame,
Yeah.
and kind of is like a first-gen college student, I love Notre Dame. And like I feel like that kind of scares a lot of people off. But even if you don't have that connection, you don't have that legacy, there's still a place for you there.
Yeah, and that's amazing to hear. And Weston, this was an amazing episode. I learned so much about Notre Dame and just your journey in general. I just want to say thank you for coming on, and good luck during your next, studying abroad and during your time at Notre Dame.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for having me. This was awesome.